world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day's going well. It is Wednesday when you hear this, recording it Tuesday night. But this is also another podcast too, because Eric is the guest tonight on the Rational Boomer podcast, but I am the guest on Analytical Iowans podcast. We're recording both. So if you get the podcast one place, you can get it at another place if you miss it at one place. So we got you covered coming and going. Welcome, Eric.
Well, thanks again for having me, and thank you for doing the show with me. Those will save me from recording a separate podcast afterward. That way,
you can get some sleep.
Well, that's not going to happen anyway, but at least then I don't have to come up with another whole podcast on top of it. But there's so much to talk about.
I got to tell you, doing two podcasts in a day, I do it frequently, but I'll do one in the afternoon and then one at night. And that's not a problem, but doing them back to back, I've had to do that by accident and on purpose. And it's not fun to do. You do a podcast virtually every day, right?
I try to do every day. My last few though, they've been stuck processing on Zoom. So it looks like I'm actually behind, but I've been recording.
Yeah,
it's been dumb, but hopefully this one doesn't have a problem.
Well, the thing about it is, I started doing it every day because I thought, well, what the hell? It's an hour and a half every day. Can't be that hard. And it's really not that hard. It does get a little tedious after a while. The benefit of having other guests on, very helpful. We had the Lieutenant Colonel on yesterday. That was a good show. Got Eric on today. Had Will on Monday. So I'm fortunate that I have some people I can lean on, especially since I'm now just getting over this cold, just starting to get over it, and trying to do this fucking shit with a cold on top of doing a lot of this shit. It's not always easy, but I made the commitment. I'm fucking here.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel. I sit down, even though Zoom has been kind of bugging me. I still said I'm going to do it, and I think I'm going to check to see when I get off of here if they're not done processing. If I can't get going, I may just start recording a couple days worth on my camera, so I at least can put them up same day. That way, and then if they ever do come through, I can just put them up afterward.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff here. You mentioned something just before we came on, and it's with regards to, I'd want to say this is Donald Trump misspeaking, but almost everything he is misspoken. And it was basically him saying the quiet part out loud. He was being asked about the war by a reporter, and they said, what do you have to say about the people that are struggling right now with high oil prices, high grocery prices? What do you have to say to them? And he basically said, I don't really care about the financial aspect as long as Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. So basically what he said is he doesn't really give a shit if people are struggling. Not a surprise to you, not a surprise to me, but I think some other people are going to be surprised by that attitude.
Yeah, he actually said, quote, "Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when talking about Iran, or when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situations. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing: we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon." Well, here's the thing. We had a deal that was working to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. He ripped it up. And in his first term, after ripping it up, did he get us another deal? No. Now, did Joe Biden get us a deal? No, Joe Biden was busy digging us out of the mess that Donald Trump caused with his handling of COVID.
Yeah.
But he didn't even try to, that we know of. And the reason and I'm almost certain that it didn't happen because Donald Trump would have been crowing about it if they would have tried. He didn't try to negotiate for any kind of a deal ahead of this, ahead of starting everything up with Iran, because he would have been talking about it. Donald Trump is too stupid to keep something like that secret, and he would have thought it made him look good, so he would have pushed it out there. So I know it didn't happen. He didn't do anything to make us a deal.
Well, he thought he could bully his way through, and it didn't work. Um, the one thing I will say about that, he keeps talking about winning the war and not allowing Iran to have nuclear weapons. Just something to note: they still have the uranium. We don't
Yes,
have the uranium. So you really have accomplished nothing. You given away the Strait of Hormuz. Um, you haven't gotten the uranium. We've gotten planes shot down and people killed and all kinds of bombing going on. And we've reaped nothing from that.
absolutely nothing. We've only lost. And his comment today, well, for any other politician, would have been a misspeak. He was speaking truthfully. He doesn't care about he's hurting us financially at all. He is just out to help himself. And that's where we're at in this country. We have a president who doesn't care what he's doing to the American people. He doesn't have a plan for anything. He's hurting us when it comes to um, everything, really. And he thinks that he is going to win big coming up in these midterms. He's not. And, if he was so confident they were going to win big, he wouldn't be saying and doing some of the bullshit they're trying to do just to make sure they're going to win.
Yeah. And now he's flying off to China. And
Yes.
that, I think a lot of people think that will be a conquering hero going in there and he'll be a big star and a lot of adulation. And maybe that's true. But he's dealing with somebody in Xi that's probably not very fond of him at this point. Xi depends on Iran for oil. They're not liking what's going on. I think Donald Trump and he have already talked on the phone, and Donnie probably got a little reprimanded from Xi and Putin. But he's going to go over there. And I would think when this was all planned out, he would have preferred to go over there with the deal and say, hey, we wrapped this baby up. But as we just said, he's going over there to talk to Xi, and he's got nothing. And then, of course, he's Donald Trump. So, some way in the process, he will fucking embarrass himself and all of us as well.
Well, I think he's going to embarrass himself multiple times over there. Now, it was months ago, but I still remember him going over and embarrassing himself with the Prime Minister of Japan.
Yeah.
His dementia was on full display, and I think we're going to see more of that. Um, they probably are going to be pumping him full of stuff to make him look more coherent, but certain things are still going to happen. Like in Japan, he was walking side by side with the prime minister. They were supposed to stay in step, turn, and bow to the flags as a cultural sign of respect. And he kind of just starts shuffling along ahead of her and gets to the American flag, kind of salutes and keeps on walking like he's got no idea where he's going. He had a very
Right.
far away look in his eye. I expect something like that to happen again. He's probably going to say something dumb. Wouldn't surprise me if uh, his sundowning behavior continues. Only difference is for us, his middle of the night posting will be happening all day while we're trying to make content for everybody out there. And we'll have plenty of in the moment stuff to talk about. Good Lord.
Do you think he understands going over there under these circumstances and sitting down with Xi going in empty-handed as he is he realize that it's embarrassing, or is he so delusional that he thinks he's going to walk in there like cock of the walk and try to control shit?
He is completely and totally delusional enough to believe that he is in charge, and he was that way ahead of um, anything happening. Like he was that way during his first term, is that he believed he was, you know, the best there is.
Yeah.
And it's only gotten worse. You know, one of the worst things we ever could have done for his ego was elect him a second time. Um, he thinks he holds all the cards because the people around him are not telling him anything. He doesn't have
Yeah.
any natural curiosity. He never has. He doesn't think twice about doing anything. You know, we heard during his first term he didn't read the briefings. They had to normally they would give him briefings of multiple pages. I don't even know how many. Could be 20, 30, 50 pages. They had to skim it all down to one page and write it in as simple a terms as possible in ways he talks, for him to read it and for him to comprehend it. And you add in what is very obviously him fighting through dementia. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah. What people don't understand is Donald Trump thinks right about here. This is all he thinks about. It's immediate. It's instinctual for him, and his instincts are horrible. He just thinks in the moment. It's very emotional. How do I cover my ass this time? I mean, he was talking to some reporters, and somebody asked a tough question, and he said, "You're a dumb person. You're a stupid person." He lost it again in front of this crowd, and I said in the TikTok, if you're on Donald Trump's communication staff, don't let him do this. He can't help but look bad, and he looked horrible. He didn't look. He looked sounded disjointed. He didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. He was repeating stuff. He kept talking about how they decimated Iran. But then people bring up the fact that, well, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. And he and Pete Hegseth both are insisting the Strait of Hormuz is open. Really? Why is only a fraction of the boats getting through there? It's not open. Uh, and then they say, well, it's just terroristic stuff that's keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed. I don't give a fuck what it is. You said you devastated them and you ended it and you won. The Strait of Hormuz should be open if you won.
Well, it was open ahead, and I looked this up the other night. It was between 200 and 250 ships were flowing through there daily, prior to them starting up this bullshit.
Right.
Now they're getting like 2 to 5 daily, 1%. Right. And they're calling it's open. We won. Oh man, and look at us. Look at how great you are. No, you guys fucked up again. Pete Hegseth probably wasn't sober enough to know what the fuck was going on, because, well, he's the original DUI hire.
Yeah.
The second one being Kash Patel. But Jesus Christ. And he says, oh, it's open. What he said about them being a stupid person, he was attacking a female reporter who asked about the ballroom.
Right.
And he comes in and he says, well, you're a dumb person. You're just a dumb person. You're a very stupid person. I've doubled the size of the ballroom and we're coming in under budget. Under fucking budget? The budget was $200 million is what you told us initially. All private donation. Then it was 250, then 3, now 400 million. And now there's a measure in Congress where they're trying to push through $1 billion of taxpayer money to fund this damn thing. Yeah, okay, it's coming in under budget because now you don't have to spend those donations you raised, right, and you can put that in your pocket. And he thinks he's doing something. He's easily fact-checked. He's easily proven false. His brand of bullshittery doesn't work in the modern age anymore, and he doesn't understand it. It's too easy to fact-check him now.
Yeah, Yeah, it's pretty simple. You don't think that $1 billion budget for the ballroom is actually going to pass, do you? I can't imagine even Republicans would sign on to that. That would be suicide, political suicide.
No, I don't think it's going to pass. What I think it is this is them putting it forward so they can blame the Democrats when it doesn't pass. Well,
Yeah,
it would have passed. The Democrats blocked it. Well, we would have had the money for it, but Democrats blocked it. See, they brought forward the proposal started by Lindsey Graham to pay for the ballroom right after the White House Correspondents' Dinner fiasco.
right.
And they thought they were doing something, but Democrats didn't fall into their trap. See, they thought they could say, okay, well, because of this, we clearly need a safer spot, and we'll get the Democrats. Oh, yeah, they'll be on board because of what just happened. And Democrats went, yeah, we don't buy it. We're not falling for that. And the general public isn't falling for it either, not nearly as well as they would have in the past when it comes to Donald Trump and some of his stuff. They're not getting the support playing these shell games anymore.
Well, the big problem is that it's said that 77% of the people in this country believe that it was set up. It was just a game played by Donald Trump. And people say, no, it's not. Doesn't matter if it was or wasn't. 77% of the people in this country believe it. So it might as well be so.
Well,
And and so we don't care if it's really set up or not. If everybody believes it, that gives you some sense of what kind of credibility Donald Trump has.
well, the problem is because there's so many things, just like what happened in Butler, just like what happens with Donald Trump all the time. There are so many things that make it look weird with this White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting. That was what was that, like 3 weeks ago now, 2 weeks
Yeah, about
ago?
that. About that.
Um, first of all, Secret Service gets the VP out before the president. Seems a little weird.
Yeah.
Donald Trump says, "Well, I had trouble getting. They had trouble with me. I didn't want to get up. I wanted to see what was going on." Well, that's not how protection details work. That's just dumb. You had Kash Patel sitting there while this was all going on, like nothing was happening. You had a guy sitting there just eating his salad like it was no big deal, while all of these things were going on and not reacting. Like it looked weird, like a horrible movie. And people are going, well, is it? Is it weird? Yes. And now it makes them think that something happened. And like you said, with 77% of the country believing that it might not have been real, that's bad news for Donald Trump. He was hoping to drive this up, much like he did with Butler, Pennsylvania, and other things to drive up his popularity going into the midterm so his party could gain some support. They're they're losing support at record levels.
Well, when Butler, Pennsylvania happened, the first thing everybody said is he set it up. It was staged. That's the first thing they said. Then we saw somebody died in it. And after a while, people said, well, it must have been real. But then he said he got hit in the ear and there's no mark on the ear. And then what he always does, no more information is coming out, no more investigations, nothing's coming out. This administration, who claims to be the most transparent, is exactly the opposite. We don't know shit about that assassination attempt. We don't know shit about the other attempt at the golf club. We don't know shit about Charlie Kirk. We don't know shit about this situation. And we never will find out. And when people continue to try to hide things, it's natural that you just expect they're fucking lying to you.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't look into it any further. They gave us very little details initially, and the whole thing was awful. Now, if they did set up Butler, Pennsylvania, if they set up the dude at Mar-a-Lago at the golf course, because that one looked weird too. If they set the one up at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I think anybody involved, if it ever comes out that it was staged, should be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Now, that's not going to happen, at least not until Democrats are back in power.
Yeah.
And they need to really look into this. We need an attack dog for an AG when it comes time, because they need to not sit on their hands and say, well, it's political. We can't look into that.
And that's the standard case that anything, I tell people this, anything that comes out now, don't worry, don't even think about it getting prosecuted, because as long as the DOJ is controlled by Donald Trump, they're just going to pass on everything. They're not going to do anything. We have to get together, get our information together, do our investigations over the next couple of years, and be ready to start prosecuting people in early 2029 after the election. It's unfortunate that we have to do that, but because the way people voted in November of 24, we're stuck with this. I know people want to do it differently. They say, why don't they just impeach them? Well, you can't if you don't hold power in Congress. So we have to ride this out a little bit and take our shot when we have the opportunity.
Right. You mentioned impeachment. I'm going to go back and I'm going to mention my stance, what I think they're going to do with that. Republicans are not going to move to impeach Donald Trump until they know they have the votes to remove him, until it is bad enough for them. Keeping him is worse mathematically than getting rid of him. Right now, they are still worried about that 25 to 30% of the country that is hardcore MAGA. And that number I heard is actually dropping a little bit. Not a lot, but some, because they're being hurt by what's going on in this country. And now they're going, oh, Jesus Christ, what's next? They're actually coming around and realizing that there's problems.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to this whole situation, what I think they will do is they won't move on him until they have the votes. But when it happens, it's going to be quick. You are going to see the resolution hit the floor of the House, probably pass same day. We're not even going to know. We're not going to see it's coming because Donald Trump isn't going to see it coming. The whole point is they're going to wait until the last minute to do anything, so Donald Trump can't respond. Because the longer they give him to respond, the worse it's going to be, and he's going to burn their party down. It's entirely possible, though, that they get on board with a Democratic push after the Democrats take the House in November and probably the Senate, that they get on board to remove him, trying to set J.D. Vance up for 2028 as a sympathetic figure. I already know what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to run, if they get rid of Donald Trump, they are going to try to say, well, see, JD didn't have a favorable Congress. He couldn't fix any of the things the Democrats broke. So you got to give him 2 more years or another term, and you got to give him a favorable Congress so he can fix everything. That's going to be their game plan if they move away from Donald Trump. I think they're hoping just like us. They're hoping every day, I think, for the Big Mac to get him and take him out so they don't have to make that move. And so they can kind of prop him up as some kind of a martyr figure and never have to actually come out and admit they were wrong for backing him.
Right. Short of him dying in the presidency, every other option is risky or an embarrassment for them. So, and I honestly believe that if something happened where Donald Trump was no longer president, there might be a heavier sigh from the Republicans than there is the Democrats, because they know what they're in the middle of. They know they're stuck, and they know that there's not much they can do. And they're too cowardly to go after him. Like you said, if they were going to impeach him, they'd have to do it very quickly and before Donald Trump had a chance to do anything. Like I say, a day in the House, day in the Senate, done, gone. It's all over. It's still hard to imagine that they would do that. I think the only time they're going to do that is after the midterms, which sounds way too late to me. But there's a couple of reasons to do it after the midterms. That way, you will have spent um, all of Donald Trump's political equity. If they lose horribly in the midterms, they've got nothing left in Donald Trump to gain anything from. Secondly, if they impeach him after the midterms, then that gives JD Vance to run more terms. We've talked about this before. If Donald Trump keeled over today, JD Vance would take over. He could run again in 2028, and that would be it. But if he takes over after the midterms, he can finish out that term and still run 2 more times. Now, it doesn't really make a difference. JD Vance doesn't have any more chance of winning the presidency than I do at this point. But we know how Republicans think. They're a little delusional. So it's got to be on their mind.
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing with that is what I think is going to happen is if they move on JD Vance, well, first of all, for him to have a chance for 2 terms, they couldn't do anything till after January 20th
Right.
because that's the halfway
good
mark.
point. Yeah.
Because otherwise he would still only get 1 term. But if they move with JD Vance or move on Trump after the midterms, you're right, they're going to spend all their political capital. There's going to be a group of congressmen in the House of Representatives and a group in the Senate that have a primary, or the general election is what, November, is it November 5th this year?
I
And
think so.
something like that. And they have till January 3rd before Congress dissolves. They have just about 2 months. Now, there's a lot of recess in there for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and everything. But
Yeah.
they've got some time in there where they're sitting there and their seat is gone after, like, they're out of a job come January 3rd. So they've got nothing to lose. Then you have, like, especially in the Senate, anybody on the Republican side that just wins re-election, they got 6 years before they have to answer to the voters again.
Yeah.
They're more likely to be willing to move on him. That is going to change the math. But I think what'll happen if JD Vance gets in, first thing he does very quietly is he's going to start slowly ending some of these things Donald Trump has done that are very unpopular.
Yeah.
You're going to see the end of the ICE raids. You're going to scale ICE back. You're probably going to see people like Hegseth gone, Todd Blanche gone. All of these members of the cabinet that are Trump sycophants are going to one by one resign on their own or be let go. He's going to be trying to establish a better looking cabinet going into 28, but I don't think he's got a chance. I don't think there's anybody in the Republican Party that stands a chance right now to win in 28 unless they somehow magically fix everything between now and then. And I just don't see it with their policies.
No, not the way it's going. Donald Trump has no hope of improving anything. That's why initially after the election, I thought we had a chance at the Senate because I knew it was going to get steadily worse and worse every day. And it was going to get so bad that even though people thought that the Senate was not attainable by the Democrats, it probably would be because it got so bad. I don't know if you saw Pete Hegseth, uh, General Dan Kane, and Kash Patel were all testifying in front of Congress. Um, Kash Patel in front of the Senate, I think. That didn't go well.
Yeah.
Kash got a little. He was wilding out there a little bit because Van Hollen made him mad.
Yeah, I saw a little bit about it. I saw he said, though, I'm looking for the article now because I just passed it, but I saw something about Kash Patel actually agreed to take an alcohol test
Yeah.
because they got him in. They got him to admit it. Yeah, here it is. Van Hollen, you're right. Um, Waiting for it to load, but yeah, he agrees to take an alcohol test because of the reports of his drinking and how
Right.
bad it's getting. I mean, they got him on the ropes here. You know, you had Hegseth saying, "Well, we don't need war powers authorization." Bullshit. That's in the Constitution. Congress has the power to declare war. Yes, the president is the commander of the army or of the military, but you need authorization from Congress to go to war with another country. All the War Powers Act did was grant presidents a little bit of a leeway because, as we've talked about with other things, it is much easier for one person to make a decision in a split second moment than it is
Right.
getting all of Congress to agree. They, you know, if there had been an actual reason for us to go to war with Iran, you know, if they had done something to provoke us, uh, waiting for Congress to get around to deliberate everything and pass something, we could be waiting 6 months at this point. You know, that made sense. But for Hegseth to say they don't need Congress, it just shows how little he knows about the position he's in. He's another one of these people with Donald Trump that has somehow failed upwards repeatedly.
Yeah, well, he does that over and over and over again. Anytime he's wrong about something, no, no, we can do that. It's pretty clear. The president's been pretty clear about this. Donald Trump hasn't been clear about anything. When Kash Patel was talking to Van Hollen was asking about him uh, missing business meetings or that sort of thing, and having to drag him out of his hotel room. And he said categorically that's not true. Um, but then Cash strikes back and says, "You're the one," meaning Van Hollen, who was slinging margaritas with a gangster down in El Salvador. Now, I don't know if you remember that story. That's a cool story, bro. But the fact of the matter is, Van Hollen and a bunch of people went down to El Salvador to try to work on getting Kilmar Abrega out. Um, and it was kind of a setup as they were sitting there on camera. The El Salvadorian government put drinks in front of all of them. Nobody drank the drinks, but everybody put it in front of them so they could make hay about these guys down there drinking and partying. That isn't what happened, but and Cash Patel knows that's not what happened, but he's still going to throw that out there just to divert from what he's doing. Regardless of a Van Hollen, if he was drinking or on the government dole, that doesn't change the fact that our FBI director is doing it. If you want to call up an investigation on Van Hollen, do it. I mean, you got all these investigations going nowhere. You might as well do one of him too. But Cash Patel is a real issue. We've seen video of that issue. We've heard of his behavior with the planes and such. Uh, I think you're right. I think he's on the ropes. I just don't know that Donald Trump would fire him, mainly because they got nobody to replace him with.
Well, yeah, they don't really have anybody, but if the embarrassment got big enough for Donald Trump, he wouldn't care. Donald Trump is all
Not at
about
this point.
one thing in particular, and that's making Donald Trump look better. And if you're
Yeah.
not helping there and you're not doing that, he doesn't need you. He doesn't
No.
need any of it. Uh, yeah, exactly. Van Hollen here, I pulled up the article, it finally loaded. He says, quote, when your private actions make it impossible for you to perform your public duties, we have a big problem. You cannot perform those public duties if you are incapacitated. And Director Patel, these reports about your conduct, including reports of your being so drunk and hungover that your staff had to force entry into your home, are extremely alarming. If true, they demonstrate a gross dereliction of your duty and a betrayal of public trust. Yeah, they ate him alive in this meeting.
They
You
did.
know, and that's the problem. They have people here who aren't qualified for the positions they're in. The only qualification Patel has is he has said nice things about Donald Trump. That's it. That's all he cares about. Same thing with Pete Hegseth. Same thing with a lot of them is they either have given him money or they say nice things about him. That's all he cares about.
And and
Donald
and,
Trump,
and we're stuck with example after example of incompetence. I mean, it's one thing if you're going to be cruel or crooked or corrupt, but if you throw incompetent on top of it, now we're in a dangerous situation.
yeah, these people are the most incompetent administration I have ever seen. Um, and when it's all said and done, the history books are going to rank Donald Trump as the worst president to have ever held the office.
By far.
Um, by far. It's not even close. I mean, he's already, and I cracked this joke, but it's true. Historians already rank him lower than William Henry Harrison, whose only claim to fame was catching pneumonia on Inauguration Day, basically going to bed and never being healthy enough to really do anything for the month he was in office.
Yeah.
If you rank lower than, somebody who was incapacitated for the entirety of their presidency, basically, you're doing something wrong. But Donald
Yeah.
Trump would never admit to that. He will never admit that he screwed up somewhere. What they'll do if they decide to move away from Patel is they would end up ultimately pushing forward with him and pushing him into a different department. They'll give him something else. Well, he's going to go over here and do this other thing. It's going to be he'll be an ambassador to this group, or he'll do this new title that we've just made up, or whatever the case is going to be. They can't let him go and just say, no, we're going to fire you. But at the same point, they know eventually they're not going to be able to just keep him either.
Well, they just did that today with that Markey or Maker guy. He's the head of the
Yeah.
FDA. There was talk that he was going to fire this guy, Maker. And somebody asked him about it, and he acted like he didn't know shit about it, which he probably didn't know shit about it. He's a good guy. He's doing a good job and such. And then today we hear that he's resigning. And I have a feeling it wasn't just a resignation. I'm sure he was encouraged to quit. And we don't know what he's going to do. See, that's the thing is whenever I hear people talk about, well, Pam Bondi's out of there, or if Pete Hegseth gets kicked out of there, it doesn't really matter because whoever they replace him with, either temporarily or permanently, is going to be just as bad as the last guy. So we're not going to get any good choices in the cabinets. It's always going to be a shit show. It's just going to be somebody different doing it.
Well, wasn't there a clip that just surfaced? I saw in the last day or two, I want to say, where he was talking about acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, and Donald Trump said, "Oh yeah, he's a good guy. He's kept me out of prison for years."
Yeah.
Something like that. Basically admitting that Donald Trump has done things that should have put him in prison. Now, he was trying to be smart and coy and act like, well, it's just because they're pushing for me. They really want us to be they really want me behind bars. But that's not the case. And this Dr. Markey
I think it's Maker.
Makery or something. He says, I want to thank Dr. Marty Makery for having done a great job at the FDA, he wrote on Truth Social. So much was accomplished under his leadership. He was a hard worker who was respected by all and will go on to have an outstanding career in medicine. Oh yeah, he was a good guy, but he's going away. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm just kind of reading here about some of the reforms. He says when he tendered his resignation, he says, please accept my resignation effective today. During my tenure, I announced 50 major FDA reforms. Biden's team had none. Well, of course, they got to go back and talk to Biden. But why did we need reform at the FDA? I don't remember anybody being pissed about how the FDA did anything.
No.
But he says, I'm extremely proud that we reduced drug review times from a year to 1 to 2 months. You're reducing review times? Have you ever thought maybe they were that way for a reason?
Yeah, no
We wrote
shit.
new guidance to advanced psychedelics, introduced a new plausible mechanism pathway for rare disease drugs, and changed estrogen labels to tell women the truth about menopausal hormone replacement. Doesn't sound like any of that was actually that important, but he puts people in place, and sure, this guy might have been a doctor, but it just reminds me of the old joke. What do you call the person who graduated medical school with the lowest possible GPA?
What's that?
Doctor.
Yeah, no shit. And it
Yeah.
seems like the doctors that are around Donald Trump are all kind of on the low end. Dr. Oz, his personal doctors that will lie for him. I understand he's going in to get another dental appointment or something toward the end of the month again. That's a little troubling too. I mean, he flew all the way to Florida to get a dental appointment, which he could have done in the White House. Now he's got another physical workup coming up toward the end of the month. It's just it's troubling to see how many times he's going into medical care. It tells you that there's something profoundly going on.
It wouldn't surprise me if again after this medical visit, if we start hearing him once again talking about cognitive assessments.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Around the time he went to the dentist, he started really talking and ranting and raving about, oh, they couldn't pass the cognitive assessment. They couldn't pass the cognitive assessment. And he believes they are tests of IQ because he is struggling with the questions. And we've gone over them before.
Yeah.
It's, find the pattern, draw a clock, draw a bed, identify these three animals, you know, remember these few words. There's not a lot of hard questions. You've looked it up.
No.
I've read it. I read the whole test on a couple different versions of the show here. It's ridiculous. They are propping him up so bad. And now he's going back in for dental work. But this time, didn't they say he's going into Walter Reed for dental?
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure where he was headed.
I thought the way I heard it is he's going in for a physical workup and dental work at Walter Reed. And now they claimed in Florida he was going to the dentist because he kept his private dentist. But most presidents just use the in-suite dental facilities that the White House offers because they've had it since the Herbert Hoover administration.
Right.
Hoover left office in 1930, I think. Or was it 32? 32. Either way, they've had dental for almost 100 years available in the White House. And Donald Trump is now using that as an excuse to get to see a doctor so it doesn't sound so alarming. Oh, he made an emergency visit to go see a doctor middle of the night. They're pumping him full of stuff. They're trying to prop him up. I really believe that he's getting probably experimental dementia treatments or expensive dementia treatments that the average person wouldn't have access to. And it's still not working. It only works for a little bit. I mean, he's so low energy compared to his first term. It's unreal. He is fading fast, and they don't know what to do. Like you said earlier, they want to ride out his political capital to the midterms and see if he's got anything left in him to keep it from being a complete and total shit show, and completely losing the House and the Senate. What they don't realize is that if they actually came out and were honest about his condition and moved on, that might actually save them in the midterms, but they're not willing to do that.
No, they're gonna fuck it up no matter what they do. They can't admit they're wrong. Um, as I look at Donald Trump on stage when he's in front of a crowd, he does seem to be pumped up a little bit with something. And if they keep pumping him up with stuff, that's going to take its toll too. But Donald Trump looks pretty diminished. He looks pretty weak. His voice is much more lax than it ever was before. We can't be that far off from something happening, something dramatic, you know, even if something as simple as falling down and breaking a hip. That's conceivable at his age and in his condition. Um, he can't hold out much longer. I will give him credit. He's almost like a cockroach. He seems to slip through everything and stay alive. But when it comes to your body and your mortal life, it's a little hard to try to game that situation so you can beat it. He won't be able to beat that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've talked about it before. Watching him doze in public, just like we saw Monday, it
Yeah.
reminds me of my grandfather. Now, granted, my grandfather was he 90? He was 91 or 92 when he passed. But the last couple of years of his life, he was battling Alzheimer's and dementia. I don't know, remember which one. And we'd be there visiting with him and whatever, and we'd be having a conversation, and he'd just be kind of eyes drooped and slumped forward. It's the exact same thing you see with Donald Trump. Dude's asleep. He's not extended blinking. He is not in prayer or in thought. Dude's asleep. And it reminds me of it because I've seen it. I've seen it personally. That is exactly what's going on here. He's falling asleep and then he comes back around, but nobody around him is trying to wake him up. They're letting him come back around on his own because a
Yeah.
lot of times with dementia patients, and I know this from, again, personal experience as well as um, I don't usually talk a lot about my private life, but several years ago, I dated a CNA who worked in dementia units a lot. And she would talk about it. When they wake up, when you wake them up from a nap, sometimes they come up swinging. They come up, they're angry, they're violent because they're disoriented and they don't know where they're at. It's not their fault because their brain is literally betraying them at every moment. So I think that's part of why they're not waking him up in these moments, letting him come around on his own because they're afraid of what he might say or do. And
Yeah.
even though him snoozing is embarrassing to him and them by extension, it's still better for him because he's not saying something wild and actually saying something unhinged or doing something unhinged that he can't help himself with. So they are, you know, they're protecting themselves that way. Could you imagine if they wake him up and he comes up and starts swinging at him? How they would
Yeah.
have to try to defend that and how they would have to try to spin that. They
I
just don't know what to do with him.
I know he's falling asleep because even at my age, at 66, if I'm sitting there not doing anything, not focused on anything, I can fall asleep. If I'm in the car with my wife and she's driving, I'll almost always fall asleep. I mean, it's part and parcel to being an old motherfucker. Uh, but he is definitely drifting off, and he got a little butthurt about it too. I don't know if you heard this. Um, he was basically calling reporters morons for having the audacity of bringing up the fact that he fell asleep in yet another meeting. And he says, all I'm doing is blinking. You just catching me at the wrong moment and you're making a big deal out of it and say I'm sleeping. Problem with it is we have videos too. And it's not just a shot caught at the right time. Uh, the dude's falling asleep. And, you know, I'm not going to shame him for it because he's 80 years old, but I will have some questions and some concerns given that 80-year-old is the president of the United States.
Yeah, if he
I
was
mean, if
just a
I fall
private
asleep,
citizen,
nobody gives a fuck. He falls asleep, it could be treacherous.
right? I mean, if he was just a private citizen, nobody'd care, and I wouldn't care. It's the fact that he is the occupant of the Oval Office.
Yeah.
And for as much shit as they gave Joe Biden all the way through, Republicans like to say, oh, he's sleepy Joe Biden. Oh, and that all started because Joe Biden chose to quarantine himself in his basement during the 2020 race to avoid potentially contacting COVID. I don't think he actually had it, but he was trying to avoid it, and he was trying to make sure that he didn't give it to his wife or anybody else. All of it. He was doing the right thing. And Donald Trump labeled him Sleepy Joe Biden. Oh, he doesn't even know where he is. He's hiding in his basement, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And now we have actual footage of Donald Trump sleeping. They could never produce non-edited footage to where Joe Biden was sleeping. The best they had was a clip, I think it was from Normandy, where they made it look like Joe Biden was standing there talking to nobody, but video footage from a different news outlet captured the same moment. And all it was Fox News had caught the frame and cut the side of it so you couldn't
Right.
see the person Joe was actually talking to. So it made
Yeah.
it look like he was doing the whole push there, but it wasn't anything big.
Do you think it's weird that we have not seen anything of Joe Biden in the last year? We haven't seen an interview. We haven't seen anything with him. That seems weird. Now he's 82 years old and he is probably diminished at this point. He's probably slower moving and maybe he is having some issues. But you would think a former president uh, might have some things to say about what's going on, but you don't see anything of Joe Biden.
I've seen a couple things, but not of him talking publicly
No.
about anything. Just they caught him, like I think he was on a plane at one point, or they caught him somewhere traveling to do something. But he seemed way more lucid and with it than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Um, if I was Joe Biden, after what happened to me, why would I come out and say a damn thing? I would
No,
let
that's a
the
good point.
record speak for itself. I mean, that's always been Joe Biden's MO anyway. And I've said it before. I wish he would have done more uh, pushing of, you know, all of their accomplishments
Right.
because, you know, they did so many good things. But what I'm looking at is he needs to, why would he come out and say anything? Why would he come out and publicly say anything on Donald Trump? His record is proving himself,
Yeah.
and we could have had Joe Biden as president right now if certain people hadn't pushed him out of the race. I think Joe Biden, I've said it before, I think Joe Biden would have beaten Donald Trump in 2024 without a doubt. Um, and my biggest complaint is that Joe Biden didn't resign the presidency and let Kamala Harris just take over and run with it
Yeah.
the last 109 days heading into the election, or 107, whatever that time frame was. I think that would have helped. But other than that, I had no objections with the Joe Biden presidency. But now we're stuck with Donald Trump. Why would he come out and say anything? There's no need for him.
I think Joe Biden felt like he was betrayed by the Democrats, and I think that's probably true. He was betrayed by them. I think he forced them to pick Kamala Harris. I think Donald uh, Joe Biden kind of pigeonholed them and made them pick her. Then you have the time frame, 100 days or whatever it was. Who else are you going to pick? You don't have time for primaries or anything like that. So I'm sure Joe Biden just says, fuck y'all. Fuck y'all. I don't need this shit. I did my time. I served my country. I'm just going to relax henceforth. And that's frankly what he should do. Um, Kamala Harris, there's talk about her running again. I don't know that that's a good idea. I don't know that she'll even have a chance. As I've said before, people want to talk about who's going to run for president. I think it's way too early to talk about that. But I think whoever is the Democratic nominee will just emerge at some point down the line after the midterms, and he'll be or she'll be the obvious choice.
Right. Well, one of the names I've thrown out there, and I don't even know that he would want to run for it, um, but I use it as a good example, is Democratic nominee for Iowa's governor, Rob Sand. Now, he is
Yeah.
pushing a lot of bipartisanship. He's talking about accountability for everybody. Um, he comes out of the auditor's office, and he is the only statewide elected Democrat, which is why I think he's got a good chance to win. And I've been saying that for a long time. But one of the things about Rob Sand, why I use him as my analogy, everyone says right now, like all the political pundits are putting Iowa still in lean Republican. At best, it's a toss up for the governor's race. I don't think it is. I think Rob Sand is going to win. I'm thinking 50 to 55% of the vote, probably top end. But let's say he comes out and he gets to 67, 70%, something like that. All
Yeah.
eyes are going to be on him going, holy shit, what did he do to Iowa? And then if he comes out with, depending on what he says in his acceptance speech, in his inaugural address, all of those things, maybe he comes out and there's a great soundbite that propels him in the national stage and that we weren't even looking at him before. I don't even know that he wants to run for president at some point in the future, but we don't know what that future holds. And that's just a
Right.
great example of somebody who I think is going to win their race, as well as, depending on what's said, could propel themselves. I mean, look at Obama. Obama comes out, wins his race, then gives a great speech at the DNC, and 2 years later, after giving that speech at the DNC, he's the Democratic nominee. I think it was 2 years, or was it 4? Whichever.
Yeah.
He was barely on the public stage, and pretty soon everybody was talking about how great, of a speaker he was and what his policies were like, and all of a sudden he's pushing forward. We couldn't have predicted when we elected George W. Bush the first time that he would have been followed up by the first African American president. There's no way. It's way too early to tell who the Democratic nominee is going to be. I think Kamala Harris, if she was allowed to run a different style of campaign this time, she could have a chance. But it's too early to say. She would definitely be the nominee. Same thing with Gavin Newsom or anybody else.
Yeah. I think Kamala, though, I like Kamala. I think she would have been a great president, certainly better than what we've got. But I think the stigma of losing the race the way she did and all that happened with the DNC, I just, I don't get the vibe that she has a chance. Not that she's not qualified, not that she wouldn't be good, but you got to take into consideration the whole vibe of the country and what they want. You throw in the sexism and the racism, and I think these two next elections, the midterms, we need to, at bare minimum, get the House, preferably get the House and the Senate, and then in 2028 get a Democratic president. If we can't do that, I don't know what else I can do. Because if we get stuck with a Republican majority in Congress and a Republican president in 2028, for a guy that's pretty positive about things, I can't be very positive at that point unless these Republicans make a dramatic change after the demise of Donald Trump. But it's absolutely crucial the Democrats take control of something, at least the House in 26. And we almost have to have a Democratic president in order to try to right this ship. And whether it's Kamala Harris or anybody else, I don't care who it is, but they have to be a shoe-in to win. Because if they don't win, we got a lot of troubles in this country.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a foregone conclusion. Barring a miracle by the Republican Party, I don't think there's any way they win in 28. We were just talking
I don't
about the
either.
midterms. I even with all of the gerrymandering bullshit they are doing, I think that Democrats take the House minimum, and I'm still thinking it could be 30 to 50 seats, even with the bullshit.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that has always helped the Republicans has been Democrats not wanting to turn up and vote. If Democrats turn up, look what happened in 2020. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody could have predicted that we would have taken both seats in Georgia. We would have said we'd be happy taking one. We didn't think there was a chance we could flip Georgia blue when it comes to the U.S. Senate. No way, but we did.
Yeah.
Um, and what I think is going to happen here is that the House is a foregone conclusion because of everything that is going bad, and all of their redistricting, all of the bullshit is going to push more Democrats to turn up and vote, which is going to hurt Republicans, which is why Donald Trump comes out and says, "Well, I'm going to send an election integrity army." Well, you
That's
don't have the
hilarious.
numbers. You don't have the numbers to send people to every polling location. You're going to pick and choose certain spots, and it wouldn't surprise me if those spots are not Democratic stronghold areas, but rather if they're the ones that are, weaker, where you're worried Republicans might lose their spot. And again, all it takes is people turning up to vote. The more people that vote, the worse it is for the Republicans. And I think when it comes to the Senate, uh, I think it is entirely possible that Democrats take the Senate by, I don't even know, what they need four to maintain or four to get control back. I said five to offset Fetterman,
Fetterman. Yeah.
but there are so many races where they could end up winning here. I mean, you got Oklahoma, and I mentioned Oklahoma because of they did the dumbest thing they could do. They promoted Markwayne Mullins to head of DHS. Well, there's a
Yeah.
handshake agreement in Oklahoma that the appointed replacement does not have to be, or cannot run, rather, I should say, cannot run in the following election. So there's no incumbent, and you just took all the steam out of the guy who had been campaigning for reelection up until 2 months ago. Now
Yeah.
somebody new has got to gain a whole new momentum where the Democrats have been consistently campaigning. That's going to change things. You have Texas with Talrico. And I just saw today, I think Obama came out and endorsed Talrico in Texas,
Wow.
which is big. I think Talrico could win. In fact, and I know primaries are different when it comes to voting turnout. You have, fewer people turn out and stuff. But if you look at the votes cast for the Democrats versus votes cast for the Republicans, if everybody that votes for the Democrats in the Democratic primary votes for Talrico in November, compared to whoever wins between Cornyn and Paxton, there were
Yeah.
more Democratic votes cast in Texas on their primary night than there were Republican votes. And that's not counting all the votes that didn't count because of the bullshit.
All right, it looks like Paxton may beat Cornyn too, and that would be a plus for the Democrats. We heard about Donald Trump's endorsees for the state legislature in Indiana, and a lot of his endorsees won. And everybody's going, Donald Trump's got power. And frankly, I wasn't saddened to see that his endorsees won the primaries in Indiana, because what we've seen as of late is the people that Donald Trump endorse and then ultimately run against a Democrat usually lose because they're the crazy, goofy motherfuckers that nobody wants. Cornyn would be a more reasonable choice to go up against Tellerico. But if they decide it's Paxton, I think it's great. I think it's great because the weirder and the more Trump humping pieces of shit they are, the less chance they have of winning.
Yeah, what I've said about the whole issue when it comes to Trump's nominees winning in November, or winning in the primaries rather, is that
Yeah.
they're running against other Republicans.
Right.
All that does, because look at, and I point to Texas and Cornyn and Paxton and say, look, he didn't endorse anybody, and neither one could get over the finish line. All this did was tell his base which side of the fence to jump on. That's all that mattered, right? He was running against Republicans. The question is going to be, can they beat Democrats in November? And I don't think they can. I don't think they do at all. It's I think what they end up doing here is anybody Trump endorses is going to be at a disadvantage going into November, and let every single one of his endorsees win. That just adds fuel to the fire of how many seats we can take, because ultimately we have to get control back in at least one house of Congress. I think we take the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
I think we do. But we
And
need one.
Yeah, we have to have the House of Representatives. If we can do that, we can pretty much stop most everything. If we have the Senate, all the better. But we got to get the House at least. And let's be honest, you talked about Georgia and the two Democratic senators. If you remember, the people that ran against Warnock and Ossoff were endorsed by Donald Trump in fucking Georgia, and they lost. So the whole gerrymandering thing, I'm pretty much tired of. I'm pretty much over it. I don't really fucking care anymore. If I was the Democrats, I'd almost say, you do whatever you want, and now that you've made this precedent, we can do whatever we want, and then continue with the pissing contest if you want. But this is a desperation move. It's not going to work. They're gerrymandering these states based on what they learned from the November 2024 election. And it's my contention that the 2024 election and the 2026 election are in two entirely different parallel universes. The thing they have working against them in 2026 is that they're living Donald Trump's fuck ups. What they didn't have in 2024 is Donald Trump fucked up. That's why he lost in 2020. But these dumb bastards forgot about it, or thought it was not so bad, and then they voted for him in 2024. But now that we've lived a year and a half with Donald Trump, and we'll be 2 years with Donald Trump, nobody having jobs, nobody having health care, oil prices are high, grocery prices are high. It's just not going to work well for Donald Trump. It's just not going to. So I don't even know if fucking with these gerrymandering thing make a difference, because people aren't going to vote like they did in 2024. The big changes are the independents. Donald Trump's got an approval rating with the independents of like 17, 18%. That's quite a departure from what it had to be when he won in 2024. So they may all be pissing in the wind. They may all be just fucking themselves over in the long run.
Well, the big gerrymandering push is part of it, right? Like they're trying to get all these seats. And like you said, they're going off what they learned in 2024. Well, in Texas, they're using Latino voters and thinking that Latino voters are going to still vote with Donald Trump, as he is actively rounding up Latino people. And we're finding out there's news stories that come out, weekly, daily, depending on where you're at in the nation, of people who have citizenship status, or they were in the middle of doing it. Sometimes it was they were going to court to get their citizenship or to have their hearing, and they're getting rounded up by ICE and trying to get thrown on a plane. And you think immigrants and Latinos are going to vote in your favor when you're doing that to them? No, they're not. Donald Trump has done nothing to help any of the Republican voter base. In fact, I have contended that it is entirely possible that the Democrats not only keep the 5 seats that they tried to get rid of, that they may
Yeah.
gain 5 additional for the 5 districts around that they shrunk their voter pool down from to try to bolster these other areas. And Democrats could pick up 5 seats in Texas alone that they didn't have before. There's nothing going on right now that leads me to believe the Republicans gain any new seats, except for maybe the ones they've gerrymandered. But I don't think they gain all of them, and I think they end up ultimately losing the House, like I said earlier, 30 to 50 seats. And
Yeah.
that's going to be very hard for this administration to try to spin as election fraud or interference or anything like that.
And I think if they were to win the House, realistically, I think it's going to be more. But if they won by 10 seats, that would be enough. That would save us from people resigning or dying or getting thrown in jail or whatever the fuck. We would still have the lead. I mean, this particular Congress, the Republicans have a 1 or 2 seat lead, and it's given them all the power. As long as the Democrats have the power, all we can basically do for the next 2 years is stop Donald Trump's fucking around. That's all we can do. We can't pass anything unless we get a super majority, and that's not likely.
No, we're not going to get a supermajority. I've seen people try to suggest that the Democrats could get to 67 in the Senate in November. It's not going to happen. We are going to be lucky to get to 67. I did the math a while back, and I think it's possible, but we would have to literally win every single Senate seat that's up for grabs. It's just not going to happen. We are going to be lucky to get to 51 or 52, and anything above that is going to be extra. Now, there are races that we can gain, and we're going to make some headway. I think North Carolina is a foregone conclusion. I think I would be surprised if Roy Cooper does not win North Carolina. Graham Plattner looks like he could unseat Susan Collins. That would be huge. Because she's been a pain in the ass for 30 years. There are spots we can gain, but are we going to get them all? I doubt it. And if we do, that just shows even more that everyone's sick of Donald Trump and Republicans.
Yeah, that's the thing is that can you imagine if we got to 67 U.S. senators? What would be happening in the White House? They would be shitting. Everybody would be shitting themselves if we were in a position to impeach him and remove him on our own without Republican help. Donald Trump would be screaming like a stuck pig. He would be claiming hoax and rigged and all this other stuff. And I think at this point, people have just pretty much not listening to him anymore because we're tired of hearing the same old bullshit. It is tiring. I don't think we'll get to 67. I think we just hopefully get enough to get the power. I hope we have enough sense when we get the power to remove the leadership that we have and try to get somebody better in there, both with regards to Hakeem Jeffries and Schumer. We need somebody better in those situations, somebody who's willing to fight a little bit and not get caught up in this, this establishment weak ass attitude. It's been not working for us. And I think there's a lot of young people coming in that understand that. And I think we've got a chance to get rid of them. Now, when I talked to Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar yesterday, he is running for a House seat in North Carolina. Now, he's certainly not a Republican. And if he was to run in the Democratic Party, there are primaries and there's things already set up. So it made no sense for him to have any hope of running in the Democratic Party. So then he initially said he was going to run with the Green Party. And when I heard that, I said to myself, and I was talking to Will about it, I go, yeah, that's not a good idea. Not a fucking good idea. And then yesterday he told me that he resigned from the Green Party and he's going to be independent, which I think is a better move. The Green Party has a lot of stigma to it. A lot of people look at them as somebody who takes away from the Democrats and causes Democrats to lose. You'd better off as an independent. What do you think in a state like North Carolina? Does he, as an independent, have an opportunity? He's sharp as hell.
I would, without knowing the makeup of his particular district and knowing more about that area, I don't know. I mean, in some cases, you can end up winning as an independent just because you don't have the wrong letter next to your name. A lot of
Right.
times there's a guy, and I don't know if you know him or know of him. His name's Adam on TikTok. He's from
Adam
Alabama.
Mockler. Adam Mockler.
I don't know his last name. He's from Alabama, um, about my age. He's always
Oh,
talking about being a Democrat in Alabama. And he actually said a while back, he talked about which party Jesus, if he came back and if the devil was on the ballot, he compared what their policies would be and how they would run, and how because of basically everything being too woke, too liberal, and too wrong, because Jesus would have a Democrat by his name, a D, the people of Alabama would literally vote for the devil. And he made a lot of sense. Well, sometimes not having that initial by your name might be the key to winning. Like I said, without knowing what this guy's district looks like, maybe he can. And even if he can't, maybe he can pull enough Republican votes away to help the Democrat actually win. And so if he's not in, maybe he still helps. Who knows?
Well, there are times when you have an independent candidate, the people will vote for the independent candidate just as a protest against the two-party system, the Democrats
Yes.
and the Republicans. We had something like that happen in Minnesota when Jesse Ventura won the governorship, which didn't turn out great, but the Republican and the Democrat, I voted for Jesse in that race. And the reason I voted for him is because I wanted the Republicans and the Democrats to realize they need to change some shit up. They need to straighten some shit out. People are going to vote for the independents. So it's conceivable that he could do all right. He's a very sharp guy. He's very articulate. He's been in battle. He's a lieutenant colonel, recently retired. Um, if people like his story, he could conceivably win. And that would be awesome. I told him, I'll do everything I can to help you win because when you get into Congress, I expect you back on the show with some regularity.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, independents have a chance. Look at Bernie Sanders. He's technically not a Democrat, he's an independent. And he's been in Congress for years because he's farther left than the Democratic Party. And,
Right.
Sometimes, especially when you take, like I was just saying, when you take party name out of it, and sometimes when you take even names like conservative and liberal out of it, and you just start talking about what the policy actually are and what you support in common sense terms, sometimes you can convert people over to your side and your way of thinking, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe he's got a chance. I don't know. I don't know a lot about this guy.
Um, I will say there's another independent in Congress right now, Angus King. He's from Maine. You said Bernie Sanders. There was another guy from Minnesota back a number of years. What was his name? Um, Barkley, Dean Barkley. He was fairly popular, and he was an independent for the state of Minnesota. So it's not unprecedented that an independent. And I'll be honest with you, maybe we will see not so much a third party, because I think the third party thing never works. And the one thing that Anthony said yesterday was when you're in a party, they have strict policies that you have to agree with and follow. And he said, I couldn't agree and follow with all of those things. So that's one of the reasons he got out of the Green Party. And one of the other reasons he got out of the Green Party, because his mom told him, get the fuck out of the Green Party. And I presume his mom is about around my age. And, there's just a stigma to it. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about the Green Party, but people in the Green Party are basically considered people that just take away from the Democratic Party and make it that much harder for them to win against Republicans. So if you get an independent, maybe you have a shot. Hopefully this kid does, because he's got some good ideas. And I wouldn't say he's ultra liberal. Definitely not that. But he is he's got the right head on his shoulders. He knows what we need to do to fix these things. And he's obviously very troubled by what we're doing in this war currently.
Yeah. The big thing about, like, what I say about the third party system is and the reason it doesn't work. Now, if he was running for a member of Congress, that'd be different. Like that's what he was doing, right? He was going to be a member of Congress, just
Right.
a member of the House. Being a Green Party, if he actually won, that's slightly different than running for president, because he could vote his own way, but he'd still have to pick one side or the other to agree with. Just like being an independent, he's going to have to decide, do I lean with the Republicans or do I lean with the Democrats? And it sounds from what you're describing, he's going to lean with the Democrats.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, being a member of the Green Party, he wouldn't get a committee assignment. He wouldn't get in on anything. He wouldn't get any power. Sure, he'd be able to vote, but that doesn't do him any good when it comes to raising his profile and everything on the national level.
Yeah.
So that's part of the problem. And then when you talk about the presidential race, and the same logic applies to governor races as well. If let's say Jill Stein would have won the presidency in 2024, okay, who does she have in Congress to put through any of her agenda? Nobody. She'd have to work within the other two parties to get her agenda through, and she's not going to get hardly anything passed. It just does not work. The best option would be to start getting members in, but even that's going to be hard. The best hope they have is that one of the parties collapse. And post Donald Trump, that might happen to the Republicans.
Well, the real reason third parties don't win, it's a very simple answer. It's money. Democrats and Republicans have a lot more money than any third party would. They can't compete on the same level as the Democratic and Republican Party. But I think a lot of younger people are coming into the electorate, and I think they're all starting to get tired of the two-party system, knowing it doesn't work. We know the Republicans need to be eradicated. We know there's problematic people in the Democratic Party as well. I don't think anybody's pleased with either party, more so with the Republicans, but Democrats' approval rating's not great either. Maybe we're on the precipice of things changing dramatically within our politics because of the new people coming in, people your age and younger that are now voting. Maybe they're going to get tired of this shit and they'll all vote for independence. Who the fuck knows?
That's entirely possible. Again, I'm going to go back to Rob Sand here for governor of Iowa. If it wasn't for the two-party system, I think he would actually be running as an independent. He's saying a lot of the things younger people want to hear. He's not, I don't know his actual age, but he doesn't appear to be that old. He is talking about working across the aisle. He he would rather speak to a room, from what I've seen, of 20 people, Republican or Democrat, than a room of 100 people of people cheering for him.
Yeah.
If he's got a chance to reach somebody and talk to him about his policies, his plans, and actually, um, you know, get the message out and talk about what he wants to do. And that's the kind of messaging that more of the younger people, I think, are going to want to hear. It's not about hardline, stick with what the party says anymore. We got to be able to do what we need to do, go from there, get everything set up, and make things better for the American people. I mean, you can't live on minimum wage. You almost can't live on double the minimum wage anymore.
No.
And it's getting to the point where they're even talking, I heard in Congress, about raising it to $25 an hour by 2031, I think. And I don't think that's going to pass.
By then it's too late. You need to have people make enough money so they can buy houses, so they can buy cars, so they can participate in the economy. Because as the old people die, and you got a bunch of young people who can't participate in the economy, everything's going to be fucked. Nobody wins on that, not even the oligarchs. They got nobody to sell shit to. I think that's one of the biggest issues we have. We need to start paying people more money. And they look at the downside. Well, it's expensive for businesses, but they also buy more shit and they pay more taxes. So there is an upside.
Yeah, exactly. What they need to do, in my opinion, we need to fix the economy. And I don't know how you do that without either A, raising the minimum wage, or B, going through an extended period like the Great Depression. And I don't want to go through that.
No, hell no.
Because it was bad enough during the Depression where nobody could afford to buy anything. Because nobody was working and everything like that. We can't go back to something that bad. But if you raise one of the problems I have with raising the minimum wage is, okay, if you're already making, let's just say 15, you're making double the minimum wage. Well, are you going to make, if they raise the minimum wage to 25, are you going to be making 32? Because you were making 7 over the minimum wage before. No, these businesses are going to pay you the minimum wage. Oh, but you've been here 5 years? Well, Johnny off the street's going to get paid the same as you. And you're going to have a bunch of people leaving, and it's going to cause problems. There's got to be some kind of protection in there for people's wages. Because these businesses, if they could get by with paying you less than the minimum wage, they would.
No question. All right. This cold is messing me up here. So I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Tell people where they can find you.
Well, if you guys, for those of you listening over on the Rational Boomer, if you haven't found me yet, you can check me out on the Analytical Iowan podcast over on YouTube and Spotify. Analytical Iowan on TikTok. If you find me on any of them, there is a link tree in my bio that will take you to everywhere I have my content. Encourage you to check it out. And if you are following me and you haven't found Mike, I encourage you to check out the Rational Boomer, because he puts out way more content than I do, and it's always something. His takes are a lot like mine. We think a lot alike, and every day we don't always cover the exact same story. So, and you have way more guests on your show, a whole bunch of people who know a lot of things, which is always good to hear and good to learn something from other people, because everybody knows something else that you don't always know. We don't all know everything.
That's my secret to a podcast. Always have people on smarter than you, that know stuff different than you. It makes it far more interesting and far more valuable for anybody listening. So we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Eric's going to wrap up his podcast.
Yep.
We did a double podcast in one, 2 for 1. I love a fucking deal, and I love to save. I'm a lazy bastard, so I like saving energy. I'm going to go get some medicine. It seems like the medicine is just wearing off now, because I can be fine when I'm medicated. But when it starts to wear off, oh, fuck. I woke up at 4 this morning because the medication wore off. That sucks. It sucks having a cold and trying to talk. So I thank you for showing up and taking the burden off my back and giving the people some valuable shit without me having to talk straight for an hour. That would not only suck for me, but it would suck for you having to listen to that bullshit. Anyway, for those of you listening, thanks for taking the time to do it. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.